Hello, this is Professor Werwath. I have great apologies for not being able to go through this case study in class. So I decided to put it on video so that each of you will have the ability to see the Droid 2 case all the way through. Droid 2 was the follow-up to the first Droid product that Motorola provided Verizon. I think the case study fails to mention some key facts and emphasize key facts that are associated with this case. First of all, Verizon was probably the most powerful cellular carrier in the United States at the time, certainly one of the largest customers, and had significant power in the industry. Probably one of the best networks, probably one of the oldest, most robust networks, and to this day, it's got some of the best reputation in the industry in terms of quality. But along with that, being king of the hill, they were able to command certain price points. They're still to this day one of the most expensive networks you can use, and they had the most power over in two directions, right? Most power over their users, which we call subscribers, right? And the most power they had over their suppliers. Okay, so Motorola, what you're going to see here in this case is that Motorola, because it's a captive in a sole source procurement, becomes basically a design house, right? A contract design house on behalf of Verizon. And Verizon had its own engineers, had its own product managers, had its own ideas of what a product line should be and what a portfolio should be, and dictates terms to Motorola, knowing full well that, frankly, Motorola is very anxious and interested in having this business. And if they don't go to Motorola, they can go to easily a half a dozen other companies that can design and build phones. With that, let's get started. So how is this case different, right? Motorola is selling this product exclusively to a specific carrier, Verizon. The brand Droid belongs to Verizon. It does not belong to Motorola, okay? Therefore, you could argue that almost the entire phone itself, the design, its concept, its vision, what it's trying to do is a Verizon product. It is a Verizon brainchild, okay? It is one of the top tier offerings that Verizon has in its portfolio. So you can see the tension that's already building here, right? Motorola might have its own ideas as to what makes a good phone. What's important in this case is what Verizon thinks is a good phone, right? These carriers, like Verizon, have their own engineers, strategists, marketing people, as well as product managers. So they come to the table with a very distinct definition and an idea as to what this product should be. Is Droid therefore a Verizon product or a Motorola product? Well, it actually has both brands on it, right? And these collaborations, these joint ventures, if you will, these jointly branded or co-branded products often have a lot of contradictions, right? A lot of issues because the two companies have different ideas as to what's important, right? Would Droid exist without Verizon, right? Well, Verizon defined Droid, right? They actually trademarked the name. So I think the answer is no, it would not. Is Motorola effectively a contract manufacturer? I personally think it is, right? Whose product vision is it anyways? Well, Verizon would basically be able to overrule Motorola, even if Motorola had data that said, this is what subscribers want to see. This is what features worked in the past. These are what features have been successful. Verizon could always say, that's fine, but we're going to do it this way, right? How is Verizon's product vision contrary to Motorola's best interests? Well, Motorola was put on a firm fixed price contract by Verizon, right, to deliver this phone. That fixed price was obviously crunched, right? So Motorola has this operating window in terms of how much direct material they can put into the phone and still make a profit, and direct labor, and how much engineering time they can put in, right? So to the extent Verizon's adding features, adding functionality, looking for more while paying less, right? Motorola's best interests are to deliver less and to get more for it, right? I mean, that's just the nature of the contract, right? That's probably the nature of a lot of contracts. And you can say, well, how is this different? In a few minutes, I'll go into how Apple changed this whole dynamic, but Motorola probably knows what it takes to make a really great phone. The problem is the constraints of costing and pricing and materials and parts count and memory and CPU and all those decisions that are made up front that have significant trade-offs in terms of, well, you pay less for a CPU, but it performs far less than some faster CPU or more memory might provide. So who has the negotiating power in this situation? I think it's clear that Verizon has that power, right? It has the power to terminate Motorola. It has the power to go to another supplier. It has the power to dictate what goes into the product, how much they pay for the product, how many products they're going to sell, how much they're going to market the product. Now, remember, while Motorola is into the design and manufacturing, Verizon is into the marketing and selling. Okay, I'll get into this in a few moments, but fundamentally, Verizon can make this product fail by simply failing to promote, failing to market, right? So they can take the Motorola brand and the Droid brand down by simple neglect, right? So in the sense, Verizon has more power than simply who they do business with, Motorola, right? What the product is, Droid is defined by Verizon, but whether or not it succeeds in the marketplace and whether they're pushing it and whether they're putting enough inventory into the channel to make sure that fulfillment is available on the spot. So a customer comes in, a user comes in, a subscriber comes in and says, I want a Droid. Here it is, good price, good availability, walks out the door, a happy customer, right? Most of that is Verizon's responsibility. I mean, if Motorola doesn't deliver, that's a different subject, right? But if Motorola can deliver, right, Verizon's on the hook for all that marketing, all that distribution, all that fulfillment. Okay, it's their responsibility. It's fundamentally their stores, right? How did Apple upset this power equation, right? The equation in the past was, Verizon dictates terms to the suppliers, right? I will argue by the end of this presentation that Apple is dictating terms to the carriers, okay? And that it literally flips 180 degrees, right? We're doing a complete turnabout. And that comes from the fact that Apple is Apple, right? They don't have 100 products in their pipeline. They don't have 30 different models the way Motorola did. Apple has one, right? And they put all of their heart and soul and branding and expertise and quality and design, software design, CPU, they put all of it, memory, everything that's needed for a successful product, right? They're going to change the equation. So to summarize, right? Motorola as a supplier sells phones to the customer carrier based on design specification and contracted prices. Heavy discounts often mean compromised designs, minimal memory, and CPU power. And I hate to say it, but lame software, okay? If you've got 30 different products through 30 different software main lines that you're maintaining, right, versus the one that Apple will do later, right, you can imagine how the software becomes antiquated. It ages, it doesn't age well, it's not terribly robust because it's living in a very small confined space of memory and CPU, but it's also underfunded and understaffed. Verizon, right, is responsible for user acquisition, right, marketing and sales, subsidizes the sale of the phones via customer contracts, right? So you sign a contract, let's call it 2-year contract, right? Meaning you pay a penalty for getting out of that contract early. That penalty could be $600 or more. If I'm a customer or user, I'm signing this contract saying, yes, I want this phone. Yes, I'll pay this monthly price. That monthly price includes a certain number of minutes, certain number of gigabytes of data, as well as an amortized price for the phone. So the phone is amortized over those 24 months, right? Subsidy locks reduce the churn. What is a subsidy lock? It basically means this phone is locked to the Verizon network. It's a piece of software that Motorola and others put in place to prevent people from migrating that phone to another network, okay? I'm sure you've seen unlocked phones. Those are phones where the subsidy lock has been removed, right? The idea of subsidy lock is to keep you locked into that network. You're not going to take that phone somewhere else, right? So the worst case is I sign up, I never pay a monthly fee, but I've got the phone in my hand. I default on my contract. I don't pay the $600 termination fee, and I take that phone somewhere else, right? If it's unlocked, it's easy to do. If it's subsidy locked, it's difficult to do, right? bottom line, Verizon's in this power position of dictating terms to both Motorola and the subscriber users, okay? They're the best network in town. They're the strongest network. They got the best reputation, highest quality. And that, if you fast forward to today, 5G, back then 4G or 3G capability, ahead of everybody else, highest speeds in the networks available to US customers, right? You pay a premium for quality. Verizon knows it. That's what they've been pushing for years, right? The user subscriber on the far end here, right? So in essence, Verizon acts as this moderator. Motorola rarely sees the subscribers, right? Motorola is selling to the carriers, right? The carrier is selling to the subscriber. The subscriber signs this contract, 2 years, 3 years, amortized phone, pricing, and rate plans are all built into that monthly charge, right? So what do we see here between Motorola and Verizon? Verizon picks Motorola as the sole source for the Droid. Okay, so a single supplier, right? Conversely, Motorola for the Droid has a single customer, right? So that single customer, single supplier arrangement, for lack of a better word, I'm going to call it the death embrace, right? The parasitic paradox, right? Motorola being the parasite, Verizon being the host, right? It's a singular relationship, almost like, God forbid, a marriage, right? You've got the supplier, you've got the customer, and they're both bound to each other over a multi-year time frame. It's difficult for Verizon to pivot away from Motorola for the Droid, and it's very difficult for Motorola. In fact, it's illegal. It's impossible for Motorola to sell the Droid anywhere else. Okay, it is a slaved product, if you will, customized product for Verizon. So this build to spec arrangement where Motorola gets paid for the non-recurring effort and the recurring effort, right? With Verizon means that Verizon owns the designs, okay? Conversely, there's a contract sale over time with penalties between Verizon and the subscriber, right? So this parasitic death embrace between Motorola and Verizon, right, has something of a corollary with the customer, because the customer is now bound to Verizon with a $600, $700, $800, maybe $1,000 termination fee attached to that contract. So in essence, Verizon has bound themselves in both directions in a way that obviously benefits Verizon, because these are not small prices. They're paying pretty large prices. So how did Apple overcome this, right? Let me just jump ahead to the Apple scenario. So Apple comes in and says, we're going to change the way things are done. We're going to change this whole business model. It's very key for product managers to understand the business model. So what's the business model difference with Apple? Apple says, here's a design. We call it the iPhone. Take it or leave it. Now, you can't go to Verizon. Why? Because Verizon's the biggest player. They have the most amount of power. So you have to go to secondary and tertiary players that still have substantial pockets, that can still be, I guess, substantial customers in the eyes of Apple, right? So they will go to AT&T, because AT&T is the Verizon wannabe, right? They want to overtake Verizon, and they don't necessarily have the innate skills or engineering competence to do that, right? They certainly don't have the network to do that, but they want to have the unique product, right? So Apple says, look, we've designed this product as an Apple product, which means it's robust. It's got a lot of great features. It's software oriented. It's, in essence, the different form factor, the slab form factor that's become standard today. You'll notice that the Droid 2 was a keyboard. Back in 2007, there were keyboards, right? Physical keyboards attached to phones. There were still people who enjoyed that, who expected that, who wanted that. But Apple changed the market so much that effectively anything but a slab, what we have today, is the Apple iPhone factor. Anything other than that is a failure. So Apple basically says, take it or leave it. Yeah, we got a meeting with one of your competitors in 2 hours. So if you say no to this, we'll simply sell it to them. So the deal was this, right? 3-year exclusive. AT&T gets exclusive access to the iPhone. Why is this good for Apple? Apple had a limited manufacturing capability, limited supply chain. They needed to ramp slowly and carefully. And frankly, AT&T with an exclusive, they were able to manage that supply chain systematically, right? And they were able to manage the ramp of production systematically. So Having the exclusive works for AT&T. However, right, they have to pay a premium. And what was that premium? Well, historically, the data usage was not something that was charged as an extra fee to the customer, right? So to the user. So now what we're seeing is this extra fee per month. Let's call it a $25 fee, right? That extra fee is now shared. So we're expanding the pie, right? The extra fee is shared between Apple and AT&T. So even though it's paid to AT&T, half the money flows straight through to Apple. This was unprecedented. Never had a manufacturer participated in the regular monthly revenue stream coming from the customer, from the user, right? Furthermore, Apple wanted the ability to set up a store, and they did. They set up the iPhone store inside the Apple store, inside of the environment. So every sale would basically accrue straight to Apple. So it was additional recurring revenue, right? They would qualify all of the software suppliers and providers. So if you want to provide software, you pay a fee directly to Apple, a testing fee, and you would have to pay to be in that environment and in that ecosystem, and that money goes straight to Apple. So Apple is creating several additional and new, revenue streams, right? This is a different business model, a very enhanced business model that favors Apple. And again, they're holding AT&T hostage, saying, look, you can have exclusive access to the iPhone, but these are the conditions, right? And if you don't like these conditions, like I said, in 2 hours, we have a different meeting down the street with one of your competitors, okay? So when I say sold as is, right? Historically, Motorola would make major changes to the phone based on what the carriers wanted, right? Apple says, we're not going to do that. We've seen how it does not work for Motorola. It doesn't work for anyone else, right? You're going to take it or you're going to leave it. The expert in the case of the designing of the phone is shifting from the carrier to the supplier. Okay, so this is a shift in the power, the engineering power, the technical decision-making, the authority, the design authority, the contract authority is shifting from the carrier to the supplier. Okay, and Apple basically says, we are Apple, right? You take it or you leave it. These are the terms. So inventing all these new revenue streams that Apple did basically largely benefited Apple. AT&T saw a slight bump when it came to the data usage and the ability to charge for that. Also, by the way, Apple dictated terms. You cannot discount this phone, right? It's sold at this price. It's sold at this price through every outlet around the world. In the future, if we sell it, we're going to dictate that price be a uniform price everywhere we sell it, okay? So there are no discounted new iPhones. You might be able to get a discounted used iPhone, but not a new one. And Apple has seen to that, right? That is part of their strategy because they do not want to diminish the brand. What they saw in the market, and I think this was accurate, right? They fundamentally saw the commoditization of smartphones, of cell phones in general. And you can say this is one of the first truly successful smartphones. There were many smartphones before this, but to avoid commoditization drives quality, technology, capability out of the phone, okay? Because it squeezes the price point to the point where you can't have sufficient memory, you can't have sufficient CPU. They saw that and they said, we are going to go for a higher tier phone. We're going to keep it at the high tier. We're not going to let the market commoditize this. And so that, the $800, $900, $1,000 iPhone, now $1,200, $1,300 iPhones are not uncommon, right? And this system, this process works. Contract sales eventually went away, right? But with AT&T, you too would have a contract that says 2 or 3 years to pay off your Apple iPhone, and penalties for early termination. Data usage premiums will apply because you are using more data. And oh, by the way, more phones were sold through AT&T as a result. So AT&T's market share improves. AT&T makes significant headway against Verizon. And frankly, this puts AT&T back on the map, if you will, of competitive carriers in the US market. So Eventually, of course, after 3 years, Apple starts to branch out to other carriers, but the same terms applied. And they basically said, look, we have these with AT&T, the precedent is set. We're getting a piece of the data premium every month from every user, okay? That was huge. But on top of that, we're getting, software sales, we're getting software, store registrations from software suppliers. We control the ecosystem, blah, blah, blah. So the only accessories that you could buy for the Apple iPhone by agreement were largely ones supplied by Apple. So I think that basically tells you that Apple was able to change the power dynamics, change the way the business was done, move the power from the carrier back to the supplier, and the Motorola way of doing business, of taking orders and being a contract manufacturer. Frankly, you don't need Motorola to do that. There's companies like Foxconn and Flextronics. These companies can do exactly what Motorola was doing and effectively white label. So if the Motorola brand doesn't mean anything, or if it's diminished, right, or impaired, what you can simply do is say, look, if I'm Verizon, I can have a Verizon branded phone. That's what Droid was, right? Why do you need Motorola to build it when you can go straight to Foxconn or Flextronics, right? These companies have the ability to basically design and manufacture the phones at scale and distribute them through the channels established by the carrier. So Motorola found itself squeezed between the premium suppliers like Apple that had phenomenal brand recognition in smartphones, okay, which Motorola didn't until much later, okay, and the carriers who basically saw a diminished power base. So will Apple one day be a carrier? Well, what we're seeing with Google is a carrier today. They have something called Google Fi. They run their own network. It's what's known as an MVNO. It's a virtual network operator. And as of MVNO, they partition off T-Mobile's network for themselves, and then they operate it as a network operator. So as a software platform supplier, right, Google also is building phones through contract manufacturers, right? You can get Google Fi phones. The whole Pixel, brand name and the whole Pixel portfolio comes from that model, and they operate a network. So Google has their hands in all three, and I don't think it's necessarily because they want to turn it into a huge profitable business. I think it's because they want to improve Android. All of that is a different model per se than simply what Verizon's trying to do. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. I think you see the dynamics here. This is much more than, whether or not a button should be fixed for the next generation or whether it should be fixed for this generation, and who makes that decision. I mean, clearly, I'll let you guys work through that negotiation. I will post something as an extra credit assignment for you. But there is a portion of it that I think you still can answer for the assignment due December 6th. So with that, I will let you guys get to it. Thank you very much and have a good holiday.